Good morrow to you all. You have fallen on barred times.
Brought to you by RHUL Shakespeare Society.
You've joined me, Cassie Dixon.
And me, Jack Hardman, as we bear some bardy truths. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Barred Times. This is your host, Jack Hardman, and with me today is Meadow Capon. Say hello, Meadow.
Hi.
Amazing. So, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I feel like I've waited my whole life to be on Barred Times. This is very exciting.
Good to hear it. So obviously you're on today to talk about your show Measure for Measure, the show you're directing for our own wonderful Shakespeare Society. But before that, I want to talk about you for a little bit. So, Meta, you're one of the most widely experienced people we have had on the show when it comes to dealing with different roles on shows, different crews, and generally being on committee and stuff like that. You've been first year rep of Shakespeare. You're currently the vice president. You are also the president-elect of Shakespeare. You are an actor. You've worked as a polo, as an events producer, and now as a director. And I wanted to ask you, how do you generally deal with that responsibility, and how do you deal with kind of the any kind of stress that then leads to?
You find things you enjoy, and for me, I've always wanted to be involved in the creating things and making the decisions. It's like, someone out there is making the decisions about something I'm enjoying. Why can't that be me? And it's a lot of responsibility, but it's so rewarding because you get to look back at it and think, especially for me coming in as a fresher, I really looked up to people in committee positions and directors. I really looked up to them. I wanted to be that. And now I get to kind of look at myself and be like, I did get there. Like it's not impossible. And although it does bring moments of stress, you're busy and you have to be organized and on it a lot of the time. It's so worth it. And I think it's so important to remember that you do this for fun.
Yeah.
Like, as much as it can be a lot, and as much as there is quite a lot of work to do in it, it is for fun. It's for the fun of the members and the committee.
That's such a good point. That is such a good point. I mean,
Thank you.
ultimately, yeah, it's something that I've definitely been guilty of before. Is kind of just throwing everything in, and ultimately we are students, and we need to remember that we need to set some time aside for the thing that we're actually all here for, which is our degrees.
Exactly. You forget sometimes, but
I completely agree. I think that is a really important reason why we do this, and it's what we need to remember. Otherwise, you do just find yourself sometimes forgetting that, and then why you're doing the things you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. It's so easy to get burnt out, especially when you're juggling with your degree. But yeah, it's just a key thing to remember. It is for fun. We are doing this for ourselves, so don't get caught up in the stress of it. It's not worth it.
I couldn't agree more. So, as well as directing this year, you've also been talking about Measure for Measure for a while. I think
a little bit here and there.
But I wanted to ask you, what kind of drew you to the play in the first place?
Man, so much. So the thing is, I studied it in A-level, my A-level English literature. And when I first started studying it, I remember my mum's an English teacher, and I used to go home to her and I used to say, why are we doing Measure for Measure? Of all the plays I could have chosen, why Measure for Measure? I didn't get it. I didn't like the characters. I thought, the story, it could have been so good. It was the way it was done. I found out that, when I first started studying it, I watched the Globe production and I didn't get it. And then I was introduced to the Cheek by Jowl version, which was set in Russia, done in the Russian language.
Right.
And it took Measure for Measure and it made it really dark. Like the color schemes, like everything from the lighting to the color schemes to the actual content, everything was much darker. All the kind of bawdy scenes you see with the prostitutes and the pimps. And I found myself actually enjoying it that way. I finally fell in love with it. I went from really disliking it to completely falling in love with it. And I think
Yeah.
Measure for Measure, although we kind of say it about every Shakespeare play, I think Measure for Measure is the one that, for me, it's the one that is most relevant to today with the
Yeah.
hashtag Me Too movement. And, it has such complex characters. I mean, Jack, you're playing one of them.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Yeah.
you can talk a bit about that, but
He's yeah. I mean, Angelo is a really horrible person, but also a great character. Kind of how he is written as an antagonist, he's a really interesting character. I just, the play is great because it takes a deeper look into what makes a person who is hyper religious, has a very black and white moral gradient, and that's fascinating to me, and why I think he's a great character, and why I'm very grateful that I'm playing him. Cool. So, talking about your concept, could you give us a rundown as to what your concept is and why you chose to explore the text through this specific lens?
Yeah, so as I said earlier, I was always much more drawn to Measure for Measure when it was performed in a more tragic context, because technically it's a problem play, but I think it works much better in the context of a tragedy. So I always knew I wanted to, if I were to direct it, I wanted to, do it with that sort of darker undertone. And I started working on the show back in last spring term. I
Right.
think, Jack, you might remember me talking about it when we were
Yeah.
first years. But obviously back then we thought it was going to be in person. So
Mhm.
yeah, it was the same tone. But when I discovered that we did have to do it online, I tried to hold on to the in-person one for as long as possible. Then I was like, I can't direct in my
Yeah.
third year. So I knew I had to change it to an online setting. But when I knew I had to do that, I knew I kind of had to let go of my old concept, because I wanted, if it was going to be online, I wanted it to be deliberately online. I kind of wanted to use that medium as a tool rather than a hindrance to the
I
production.
think that is a really, really good point. And I think it's something
Thank
that
you.
the best shows on campus this year have utilized properly.
No, yeah, exactly. So that's exactly what I wanted to do, is just kind of use that online setting and make it a thing, rather than just, we're in a pandemic, we need to do theatre online.
Yeah.
So I was kind of brainstorming ways in which I could still do the kind of dark concept of Measure for Measure, but make it a deliberately online production. And it kind of came to me that we could do it as a documentary, make it eventually became a crime documentary in the style of the Netflix crime documentaries that are pretty popular right now. But yeah, I had this idea, was firstly for Act 2, Scene 2, Act 2, Scene 4, where Angelo and Isabella have their confrontation. And I thought, I wonder if we could do that as if it were in a workplace and kind of the footage had been found or something. And then that kind of spiraled into, what if we did the whole thing as if it were a crime documentary? Then we could have the interviews, and then it spiraled more into this modern day context. So basically, essentially what the concept is it's modern day. The Duke has died. Afterwards, Isabella and a few other people come forward with their stories about how the Duke manipulated them and what the Duke was like. And so the original play is the dramatic recreations of the crime documentary, and then that is kind of divided up with interviews with the characters, but that's all in modern day speak. So yeah, essentially that is a concept, and it's kind of framing the Duke as the villain. Obviously, Angelo is still a terrible person, and we don't brush over that at all.
Sure.
But to me, a key way of me enjoying the play was kind of this thought of the Duke is the mastermind behind this.
Yeah, I think the idea of doing a crime drama is so great as well, because it means that it not only does it mean that we can have interview sections which are when it's just you and a camera in a room. Normally it feels weird, but when it's already an interview, that feels perfectly normal. And so doing it as that makes perfect sense. I think all of the societies have done a really good job, but I don't think normally in a year Shakespeare turns out 4 shows as well as, a podcast series, as well as multiple like D&D series, as well as the academic workshops that we do, as well as all the socials that we've done. I think if anything, and it's weird to say, but if anything, we've done more in this year when we can do less, because
Yeah.
it's forced us to innovate and to do new stuff.
Absolutely. Exactly. I think it's not always been a negative, COVID, because we've
Sure.
done so much more with it. We've been forced to, as you said. Motivation follows action.
Sure.
It's kind of counterintuitive, but you have to take the action. Then you realize, oh, people are enjoying this. Like, starting up Bar Times this year is kind of a big project, but it's great fun, and we've had loads of success with it. And then you're motivated to do it more. So I think having the passion to start up things like this, and your D&D events as well, which is something completely new, but have been really popular. I think that it stems from your passion of D&D and Shakespeare.
I couldn't agree with you more. Motivation is a really hard thing to cultivate when you're starting new things. I myself am starting up an organization, a group, with a few of my friends at RHUL Holloway. And the motivation to get that started is so hard to even get like the first few steps done. But the more you do, the more you want to do. I feel pretentious even saying it, but the old adage of every journey starts with a single step.
It's not wrong.
Yeah, it's not wrong. It's not wrong. Do a little thing. Get a little book and do a little thing.
It all starts with a little book, I'm telling you.
It starts with a little book. I want that on a t-shirt.
We should get matching t-shirts.
We should get matching t-shirts for that one. Incredible. Okay. So are there any red flags that you can think of from I don't know, experience, that when someone is demonstrating them, you can kind of tell that maybe they aren't the person that they need to work on these things in order to kind of avoid I don't know, being not so great a leader?
Yeah. I think what makes you struggle as a leader is having a lot of self-doubt, because as a leader, you need your team to be able to believe that you can do it. So if you can't believe that you can do it, no one else is going to believe you can do it. And I think even if sometimes you do have that self-doubt, putting on the front of confidence, acting like you're confident will allow confidence to follow. So I think that's kind of the first thing I say, is having self-doubt can be really detrimental to good leadership.
It's also completely natural, right? Like, obviously it makes sense for you to feel doubt when you're putting
I do all the time.
No, same. Like, it's I think this is something that the co-host of this podcast, Cassie, and I have talked about previously, is when we were starting this up, we were really like not concerned, but there was obviously some doubt there as to how successful Bard Times was going to be. We definitely didn't see ourselves making 30 odd episodes, and it's perfectly natural. But I completely agree with you. Letting that then show, especially in front of your team, will destroy you.
No, absolutely. No, I'm not, self-doubt isn't a bad thing. Having self-doubt shows that you care, but don't let that kind of overwhelm you, and kind of impact the way you lead others, because your team is so important to how you will run a society or whatever it is you're running. So if your team don't have confidence in you, as you said, it's all going to tumble from there. So really, even in the moments where you're not feeling it, try as best you can to believe that you can do it, and the rest will follow.
You may be the brain, but they are the legs, arms, lungs, stomach, heart. If all of that isn't working properly, you're not going to go anywhere on your little squishy legs.
My little squishy legs. I mean, no, I definitely especially found that for Measure, because although it was something that I've been thinking about for a long time, oh my God, I wouldn't have been able to do it without my team.
Absolutely.
Like, they have taken my initial vision and they've elevated it to such an extent that I wouldn't have been able to think of it on my own or do everything on my own, like never. So for that reason, I think I have to kind of lead with the same enthusiasm and courage that they have. Otherwise, what's the point of me? Why am I here?
That's fair. Existential and terrifying.
No, exactly.
But fair.
Which kind of leads me on to my next point, is that as a leader, you need to kind of have an idea of what everyone else is doing. As I said, the team is so important. You have to show interest in every aspect of that team, because again, without the team, you wouldn't be the society or company or whatever you are. So I think having a base knowledge of every aspect of the team and keeping in consistent contact with them and being enthusiastic about their achievements as well, even though, for example, I know nothing about editing. I really, truly know nothing. But if Vicky would come to me with like a shot of something, I'll be like, yeah, girl. I'll be like, that's amazing. I know nothing, but the fact that you can do it and you are, working so hard for this team makes me really proud and fills my heart with joy. So it's important to also show your appreciation for the rest of the team as well. And I think, again, that leads me kind of onto my last point, is that you really need to listen to those around you, because although you are the leader and although you may have been elected, you may have been hired, whatever that may be, you have everyone around you for a reason. And as I said, although I might be the director, I am not well versed in everything. I know nothing about editing. I know nothing about publicity. So I will take on like Abby's ideas for the publicity, because I know she's far more experienced in that than I am. So even though I might be the one making the last calls, I will respect her opinion, more than I respect my own about publicity.
There's only so much one brain can hold. And so if everyone has different kind of area of expertise, I mean, Theo, in terms of organizing things, is the organizer, secretary of Shakespeare, DSM of every show that has ever been made, and so I think I couldn't agree more. Like, it has to absolutely come into it, the ability to listen. I think it's something that I've realize a lot more over this year, particularly working with Cassie, who is incredible.
Oh my God.
And just a fountain of knowledge. Just a fountain of knowledge. Like working with her on this, it is really interesting to see what I've stolen from her in terms of
it.
Which is, I mean, we're in a professional circumstance, is what mostly listening is just stealing from other people.
Exactly.
In the nicest possible way. It's a form of flattery. Yeah, exactly. Now, talking about stealing other people's ideas, let's go on to the news. By the way, that wasn't me stealing the idea of a news section. It's the topic of adaptations from the stage to film, specifically about the recent adaptation of Dear Evan Hansen that dropped its trailer just the other day, probably about a week ago by the time this episode comes out. And then also the other kind of musical adaptations that have come out. So I wanted to ask you where you stand on kind of musical films and why you think some of these films haven't met a kind of the audiences and the critics' expectation of them, and why they've flopped like they have.
Yeah, so I think because, back when Hollywood was old Hollywood, musicals were the big thing, musicals were the draw, and you had the stars, the Hollywood stars were often from musicals, and they would be part of the draw. Now we've kind of followed in the same footsteps, but now that our stars are, late night show hosts and straight actors, not musical actors essentially, it doesn't work in the same way. I think because musicals, although they are extremely popular, are still sort of a niche thing,
I mean, in terms of being able to act in them, I for one have been in a few musicals and I can't dance at all. It's like watching a baby deer on ice. Like the idea that just because someone can act or can sing, can do all three, or can dance and can act, or can sing and dance, and then to expect them to be able to act is somewhat of a fallacy, and they are separate skills, despite the fact they're kind of everyone in musical theatre is expected to be this like triple threat.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've followed in the same footsteps. You used to have, the stars of the day were Judy Garland, your Fred Astaire, and now we still have those stars, but then they're not musical actors, and yet they are put in musicals. And because musicals are still quite niche, and it doesn't really translate in the same way.
Sure.
I think they're falling into the trap of getting a big name to draw audiences that might not otherwise be interested in a musical. But by doing that, you're firstly not appealing to those people because they wouldn't be that interested in musicals anyway. And then you're not appealing to the people who would be interested in the musicals because what they want to see is a musical
people
actor
who can sing and dance, singing and dancing.
They want to see a musical being executed well, and that's sadly not always by the big names.
Two good examples of casting in films that I don't know how good they are yet because they've not come out, so we're still waiting on them, are actually, despite the fact he's a bit old to play a teenager, Ben Platt in Dear Evan Hansen, because obviously we know for a fact he can do it. And then, of course, the other one is Anthony Ramos, who was in the original cast of Hamilton and is now playing the lead in The Heights. In The Heights is what I'm thinking. Yeah. Obviously, two musical actors who have a lot of acclaim playing roles that they are absolutely suited to and well suited to. And that's great. And it's honestly part of the reason why I want to see In the Heights quite so badly, because not despite the fact it is one of my favorite musicals, but if they cast someone like a certain TV show host as that character, that would be problematic in a whole different reason. If someone who wasn't well suited to that part, I'd be a lot less eager to go see it because I wouldn't want to see something that I love and I enjoy kind of ruined or
being butchered,
slandered in some kind of way. Whereas seeing someone who is clearly extremely capable having a thwack at it, I'm excited for that. I'm big up.
No, exactly. And I think, movie musicals, as much as some modern ones have their faults, are extremely important because, at least for me, that was what got me into musicals. Although now I can look back at these musicals, knowing musicals better, and can criticize them. At the time, being new to them, I fell in love with Les Mis and La La Land, and I think And even Mamma Mia. I know you might have your opinions about Mamma Mia.
I think it is a fun film.
No, but that's the thing. That is my point.
Yeah, it's fun.
The key to Mamma Mia is that it doesn't take itself seriously at all. And, and
I'm pretty sure
like,
the entire cast was drunk while filming.
Well, exactly. You're not there to watch them, whack out a power ballad. You're there to watch them have fun. But, I think something like Cats, which did actually take itself quite seriously, that can be alienating to both someone who isn't into musicals and someone who is into musicals.
Yeah, especially when the actual visuals of it are some of the campiest things they could have come up with. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's hard. Les Mis is a really good example because that is something that the idea of we want to take Les Mis quite a realistic musical as far as musicals go, and putting it into a like a physical world that we are actually going to build most of. Great.
Yeah.
Amazing. There are obviously some shortcomings to that film. But a lot of the good bits are about the fact that you actually really feel the atmosphere and the visuals are really great.
Yeah.
And it's because that is paired well with the film. And Mamma Mia, as much as I have my opinions about it, the idea of like a brilliant, bright, kind of Greek island, in the way that they did it with lots of white and blue, fitting with this bright, cheery songs from ABBA, is a match made in heaven. Yeah, and it's great, and it fits the vibe. But having bright cat people who are basically just people in like lycra suits.
Come on. Yeah, that scares everyone.
while I mean, terrifying, full stop. But yeah, I think that's a really good point. Kind of being able to match expectations of people, of the people that are going to watch it, will mean that the people who might not necessarily want to watch it will then watch it because their friends have been going on about how great it is. But I also think things like The Greatest Showman, for instance, one of the biggest soundtracks to a film ever.
Absolutely.
How wild is that?
Yeah.
Like and it's because they were like, okay, what do musical theatre kids like?
Yeah, no, absolutely. They kind of combined the classic musical theatre elements with the modern day sounding music, the kind of pop chart sounding music, which ended up appealing to both people who might not usually watch musical theatre and those who do usually enjoy musical theatre. Whereas something like Cats, in my opinion, tried to appeal to more and ended up appealing to far fewer than.
Yeah. On that note, we've got to wrap this up. Thank you so much for coming on to the show, Meadow. As per usual, I have to ask you a difficult question, although I think I already know the answer. What is your favorite Shakespeare show?
Oh man, this is so tough. It's got to be Measure for Measure.
Yes, yeah. I figured it might be Measure for Measure.
Everyone knows that. Everyone knows that. Every academic discussion group, I will get it in there. It doesn't have to be about Measure for Measure, but I will raise my hand and I will talk about Measure for Measure. And I think I've kind of told you the reasons why I love it.
Yes, no, I think we've covered this.
Yeah.
I still have to ask. I'm contractually obliged. I'm not contractually
It's absolutely no problem
to you all. So, thank you everyone for joining me this week for Bard Times. This has been Jack Hardman and Meadow Capon. Stay safe, and in the words of the Bard himself, we know what we are, but know not what we may be.